All right, it's 8:15. You're watching OTB AM. Football writer Martin Lipton is on the line. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
Good to speak with you again. Thanks a million for taking the call. We wanted to chat to you, obviously, after the squad announcement yesterday, which we'll talk to you about in a bit. But in so much as you can possibly speak on behalf of an entire nation, is there an expectation, just in relation to the conversation that's happening around the off-the-field stuff in relation to Qatar and its human rights record, is there an expectation that on the England squad, because obviously Gareth Southgate addressed it fairly fulsomely yesterday, an expectation that they'll speak about Qatar while they're there, or do most just subscribe to the shut up and play FIFA approach?
I think that they'll be asked. I'm not covering England, so it's not down to me, but I'm sure those who are will, particularly the senior players. I think it'd be unfair to throw that on the ones who are fairly young, actually, but the senior players will be asked their opinions. I suspect quite a few of them will be very happy to give their opinions, actually. Harry Kane has already spoken and others will. Jordan Henderson, unquestionably. So Marcus Rashford, he's very willing to say what he thinks. I don't think there'll be a lack of voices from the England camp, particularly in the build-up. I think once the tournament starts, that'll be a bit different. The view will be, look, what else can we say? Our views are pretty clear. Mm-hmm. But I think they will be asked, particularly when in the first 2 days, on the Wednesday and Thursday, at those press conferences that are held in Doha.
Yeah, we've all been trying to make sense of this thing. Particularly, I think it's focused minds over the last 3 or 4 months of, are we allowed to enjoy the football? On what level should we continue to shine a light, obviously, from our side, on the media point of view, into what's actually happening in that country? Even so much yesterday, the Republic of Ireland manager, Stephen Kenny, is doing his own press conference about a couple of upcoming friendlies and been quizzed about whether, why should he go to Qatar, essentially. So we're all trying to sort of make that bit of sense of it. What's your, as we now on the eve of the World Cup, Martin, what's your view on that, trying to strike that balance of, I guess, being able to enjoy the football on some level and being aware of everything else that's going on?
Well, the answer to that, I guess, is the World Cup is starting on Sunday, the 20th of November, and it's the biggest sporting spectacle in the world, and millions of people will be watching it, and million or so people will be going to see it, and I'm one of those who are going to cover it. So the event is the event, but at the same time, it would be remiss not to take note, recognise, talk about where this tournament is taking place. This is a country that's been built out of the desert in 40 years. There was nothing there, it's truly bizarre. You see a photo from the late 70s, early 80s. There's one hotel just surrounded by sand. Now you can't see that hotel because there's so many other bigger hotels dwarfing it. It's truly remarkable. But that has been built on the backs of migrant labourers, a country where only 1/7 of the population are native people. There's 300,000 Qataris and a population of 2.1 million. A nation where homosexuality is banned, where misogyny seems to be pretty much ingrained. Not totally, but certainly to a degree. You can't ignore these facts. At the same time, it's a football tournament.
Mm. Yeah. David Squire's piece in The Guardian this week was a thing of beauty. It was a very different piece from him. For people who are familiar with his drawings in The Guardian, it was a true story about a migrant worker, a hotel worker, and their experience of how poorly treated they've been. Is it part of your responsibility, Martin, or your brief almost going out there to cover that other side, or what will your approach be when you're out there?
We've got 2 news reporters going. I suspect that they will be involved in, as we have done up to now, in those things. I mean, I have a particular role within the sporting coverage. I've been to Qatar a couple of times. I'm not a huge fan, but it doesn't matter what I think about the country. It's where it's taking place. I've long covered the scandal of Qatar winning the right to host the tournament. I've written ever since that date in late 2010, I said the scandal with 2018 wasn't Russia winning, it was England getting 2 votes. The scandal with 2022 was Qatar winning. My position has never changed. But at some point, I have to be realistic about it. I'm there to cover a football tournament as well.
Mm. Obviously watching the match last night, I suspect that even the England following non-Manchester United fans who were watching it last night were suddenly dialed into the fact that here was a striker full of confidence, looking like an absolute world beater. Probably never been looks as if he'd never been playing with as much confidence as he was last night with Marcus Rashford. Must fill England fans with a lot of hope.
Well, it certainly pleased Gareth Southgate hugely. I don't think Rashford starts, but I do think he'll be involved. No, I think he'll go with the front three of Foden, Sterling, and Kane.
Right.
That's what I mean. I personally want Saka to play, but that's not my choice. But I think that having a fit, flying Rashford does make a big difference in terms of his options off the bench. And were there to be an injury, or were he to come on and score a couple of goals in the early matches and make a case to start, then clearly he'd be in fine form.
Some of the criticism, I guess, Martin, of Southgate's pick, and look, he's in a lose-lose situation here, because no matter who he leaves out, there's going to be a little bit of controversy from some quarters. But this argument that he picks on form, you look at Calvin Phillips in the team, you look at Harry Maguire in the squad as well. Granted, Callum Wilson over Tomori is based fairly heavily on form, but do you buy that? Because he talks all the time about picking on form, and yet you see players like Harry Maguire and Phillips who just haven't been there at club level in recent weeks.
I think it's easier for him to justify the Phillips selection because there isn't anybody else who works as a holding midfielder. Maguire, it's because he trusts him. He's never let him down. He's a very loyal manager. There's no doubt about that. And Maguire has never played poorly, really, apart from one game. That's in 50 caps for England. So it's hard to be critical. In the Euros 18 months ago, he had a pretty average at best season, was under fire. Missed the first game or so because of injury. When he came in, he was excellent and scored goals. And I think that's the thing with Maguire. He seems to be more relaxed playing for England than he does playing for Manchester United.
Defensively, I look at the squad and I'm thinking of the left side, and granted Ben Chilwell out of the squad with injury. But if you see Luke Shaw as potentially the only left wing back in that squad now, like Saka played there, I know, in September against Italy. He wasn't good that night in that position. Kieran Trippier is an option maybe there, but he's probably going to be on the right hand flank. If there's an injury to Luke Shaw, for example, it could be quite troublesome on that side.
Yeah, I mean, I think Saka probably is more likely than Trippier, because I think you're right that Trippier may well start. I mean, it is a coin toss. He might go with Alexander-Arnold thinking he can play him into form, and then Trippier becomes an option on the left more. Yes, the vulnerabilities are there with it, but that, again, the only other option left back, Mitchell at Crystal Palace, maybe. There weren't too many, and he's played one game. It is hard to it's easy to criticise. It's harder to come up with alternative solutions, I think.
Was there anybody who was the top of your list, Martin, of people that you thought, wow, he was unlucky to miss out?
I tossed between Tomori and Tony, actually. I would have liked both of them in, but I can see why he's gone with the men he has got. The one I think that everyone will be surprised about was Gallagher's selection, because his last game was in June against Hungary and he was pretty awful. He hasn't had a brilliant season, but he's got legs, and I think that's given him the nod over Ward-Prowse, who's possibly quite unlucky not to make it.
Yeah, and Maddison obviously has got a lot of the headlines as well, and it's funny how when these squads get named and there's so much focus on one player who might end up seeing very little game time potentially once they get to the World Cup. What's your view on Maddison? Because I think the hope is obviously maybe that he might bring a bit of an extra edge maybe to that England attack. Do you see him getting much game time?
It all depends on how he behaves over the next 8 days, I suspect. It's clearly been an issue, whatever Gareth says about Maddison's temperament, personality, etc., about the sort of lad he is. They've adopted that All Black philosophy of no dickheads, haven't they? And I think it's fair to say that one or two might consider putting Maddison in that bracket, and therein lies the issue. As a footballer, I've absolutely no doubt. I think he's an outstandingly talented player. He gives you a dead ball threat. He can pass the ball. He can take set pieces. I think he thoroughly deserves a selection on his abilities on the pitch. The reason he hasn't been around has been James Maddison.
He certainly deepens those attacking options, Martin. And there was the incident at the casino, and he was pictured, and the England team were playing, and as you said, that there are incidents like that cause you to question his. I guess his.
But also, that was 3 years ago. Maybe, maybe people grow up.
Yeah.
Well, Southgate also said it wasn't an issue for him. He said.
Well, he has to say that, doesn't he?
Well, he said he also. Interesting.
People don't always tell the truth. Even George Washington lied occasionally.
It's a fair point, but I also could buy it, is the thing, because like ultimately, what difference did it make if he wasn't in the squad? So be it.
Well, yeah, I think if other factors had been, he wouldn't have been there. But the fact is, it was a 26-man squad. And maybe he does feel he just needs a bit more angel dust in it, magic dust in the squad. Someone who can actually break a game open with a pass, if the others aren't working. But he's got to get into the team or into the involvement ahead of Mounts and Fodens and Sterlings and Grealish and Saka. There's quite a lot of talent as an attacking force, particularly if you assume there's going to be the two central midfielders. They're likely to be Bellingham and Rice to start in a 3-4-3.
It's funny, Martin, like Southgate gave his reasoning for not including Reece James as too much of a gamble with the injury, which is totally understandable and fair. And yet you look at Kyle Walker being picked and Calvin Phillips being picked, who are both struggling with their own injury complaints as well. So, like, is that hypocrisy in some ways? Like, you're not picking Reece James because of those gambling issues in terms of gambling on his injury, but then again, you're going with the likes of Walker and Phillips, who are also struggling.
Well, at least Phillips is now playing because he played for City in midweek.
Yeah.
His argument was simple, really, that James wouldn't be fit for any of the group phase, and they think that Walker will. So he wanted him to have played in the group phase rather than going straight from injury into potentially being available for the knockout phase. You may think it's a bit harsh, but you could only take two. I think 2 is the maximum number of risks you can take in a squad, even in a squad of 26. I mean, in 23, I wouldn't take any risks personally. In a 26, you can take 2. He got away with 2 last time because both Henderson and Maguire came in with knocks, and he needed the 26 in the end because obviously Chilwell got injured and COVIDed, and Mount had issues, and then Foden missed the final because of injury. So you need a deep squad in that regard.
What would, again, I know you're not picking the team, Martin, but what would your back 4 be, out of curiosity?
Well, he's going to pick a back 5, so it doesn't matter.
Back 5, sorry, yeah. What's your centre half? Like, what's your centre half selection?
Is Harry Maguire starting as well?
I think he'll go for the first game. I think he'll go Dyer, Stones, Maguire.
And nobody should be like. I was watching some of the reaction yesterday about Harry Maguire being included. I mean, this is not a great shock to anybody who's been following English football.
No, I mean, the surprise would have been if he wasn't in the squad, not if he wasn't in the squad.
I've seen it suggested, Martin, by a couple of journalists online that it's England's best squad on paper since 2006, and look, on paper doesn't matter a jot. But would you go along with that?
Let's just see. I think in terms of quality of attacking players, yes, and depth of attacking players. Even if we've only got one proven international goal scorer, but he's not bad. 50 goals in 70 odd games. And we saw in the Euros Sterling and Grealish, particularly Foden as well. Mount played well. So yeah, I think you can see that argument. I think defensively, it's harder to make that claim.
Yeah,
if you look at the teams that England, even in 2014 when they weren't great, Jagielka and the boy who was at Chelsea, who was at Bolton before, I can't remember his name now, but they were decent centre halves and in decent form, and he made the big decision, Roy, in 14 to leave out Ashley Cole to play to send Luke Shaw as a second left back behind Leighton Baines. Maybe that was a mistake looking back. I still think if you look at that 2002-2006 defence, when you had in 2006 they had the options of Campbell, who was sort of first reserve behind Terry and Ferdinand. In 2002, Southgate himself was first reserve in the squad behind Campbell and Ferdinand. I mean, they were stronger then than now, I think.
I was chatting to Neville Southall in Dublin last week, and he was quietly confident about the Wales-England game in the last group game. And You even look at the United States squad in the end this week, and probably stronger than some people give them credit for, and they'll want a reasonable tournament. Do you see any way in which England don't even get out of the group?
Well, anything's possible.
Yeah.
But I think England win the group relatively comfortably, personally. Okay. But it's a hostage to fortune when they lose 3-0 to Iran. But no, I don't think they'll particularly shine, but you don't have to shine. You have to get through, and then it becomes interesting. I think it's a possibility that England may be if they win the first two, they might play a shadow team against Wales, because it won't matter, because they could have won the group by then, and that would be perfect for Wales as well, I suspect. I'm not sure Wales do get through. I think that USA or Iran, in fact, both of them could end up finishing above Wales, but we will see.
I couldn't help but laugh watching the Carabao Cup fourth round draw last night after the United Villa game at Old Trafford, and it only strikes you when they talk about the dates and the World Cup final being on the Sunday, and then these Carabao Cup fourth round ties being on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. Like, I mean, you have Man City Liverpool as one of those games as well. This is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a reserve team game, won't it? As simple as that. I mean, the other thing I would say is that only 4 teams are playing the last weekend of the World Cup out of the 32. So, and a lot of them will be out the previous weekend because of the quarters. Yeah. So, in fact, they will all be out the previous weekend, because once you get the 2 teams of the semis are the 2 teams of the final weekend. So they'll actually have been home for 10 days, a lot of the players.
Yeah. City, they'll be Trent Alexander-Arnold and Foden, Henderson. They'll all be well rested, Martin, is what you're saying. They'll have had a few weeks with their feet up. That's what you're getting at here?
Are you suggesting they're out in the group phase?
Would never say something like that.
They might be. You never know. I mean, they have been in the past. But it all depends. The one thing that's absolutely critical for England is Kane to be fit and firing, because if he is, that gives them a goal a game, doesn't it?
And Conte saying that he's what did he say during the week, that he was pretty tired looking, and he was
wonder why the haze.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and to be fair, it's not unique in that regard. I think everybody who goes there is going to be in the same boat. At least that might be the one positive. We'll see how it pans out, as you say, over the next while. Martin Lipton of The Sun, thanks a million.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.